We have more speakers lined up, obviously, till later tonight. And right now, we have another very, very impressive gentleman coming up. Let me tell you a little about him. Mr. Ghias Khan, who is the CEO and president of Engro Corporation. Now, Ghias Khan is the fourth president and CEO of Engro. And with many notable achievements under his belt during his time at Engro, he has been instrumental in revamping its strategy, its culture, and its global outreach. And under his vision, Engro has won multiple awards. So moving on to our talk, without any further delay, I welcome on this platform Mr. Ghias Khan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again at the 021 Disrupt conference. Thank you very much, Jahan, for inviting me again. And I believe Nadir was here last year and the year before that it was me. So it's an honor for us, a pleasure for me to be here again. Building a connected future is really about how we can reduce the digital divide so that all of us can thrive. And I'm going to try my level best to talk about this subject from Engro's perspective, and I'm going to try and cover it in two ways. One is, what are we doing directly to address this issue of the digital divide by way of the businesses that we invest in? And the second is really about how is technology and a more connected world impacting our traditional businesses as an industrial conglomerate, and how are the markets evolving, and what role does technology and a connected world play in it, and what are we now pushed to do? But just to start things off with where we are as a country when it comes to talking of connectivity and sizing up the digital divide. There was a study done recently by The Economist, where by their intelligence unit, where we ranked 57 out of 60 when it comes to an inclusive internet index is something that they came up with. Pakistan is perhaps one of the very few countries outside Africa where more than 75% of the people don't have broadband access. We rank something like 122nd when it comes to mobile broadband, and in terms of fixed line speed, I think we're something like 159th. So the first question really is that, what are the reasons for it? Clearly, there are infrastructure gaps. There is something to be said about the buying power of people, amongst other things, and there's something to be said about the overall digital literacy of our population. But what impact can this have on us? So there is a risk that 50 million of our younger generation, of our students, may fall behind. We're a country which has had fiscal issues for God knows how long. We have 50% of our economy right now, which is undocumented. Our tax to GDP ratio is 12%. Just to give you an idea, India is somewhere close to 20%. And we're staring down a fairly substantial fiscal deficit this year as well. But the reason why I'm giving this background is that about 100 million of our adults right now are unbanked. So that just gives you an idea about the size of the problem. And if we look at what's happening around the world, and I don't need to tell you, the boom that we have seen, the rise in the number of Zoom meetings that we have, the fall in business travel and everything that has happened because of COVID. And it's not just this pandemic, but I think what the pandemic has really done is it has kind of magnified issues, and it has just given us that picture of where we stand. So clearly, getting reducing the digital divide is one of the biggest pressing issues that our country faces. And true to what we are at Engro, one of the first things that we ask ourselves whenever we enter a new business line is that, are we contributing somehow to some of the most pressing issues that our country is facing? It was agriculture productivity when we went into Engro Fertilizers. That's how the company was born. Energy availability, reducing of the current account deficit, when we went into Thar to exploit a local energy resource, whether it was set up of our LNG terminal to reduce the gas crisis that our country was facing. And now we've gone into connectivity as our fourth vertical, because we believe reducing the digital divide is an imperative for our country. So the two areas that we have picked for ourselves in terms of a business, the one that we've already started is tower sharing. There is a lot that can be done in order to optimize connectivity infrastructure. What we've seen over the last almost 3 odd decades, that whenever an MNO has come into Pakistan, they have relied on themselves to build out the entire infrastructure. So you've got about 40,000 towers in the country, and there is tremendous amount of redundancy. Or let's say that there is a lot of infrastructure which could have been shared but didn't get shared, because the concept of independent tower company operating in Pakistan and the concept of tower sharing has been a bit delayed. And that's where we propose to come in. Where, mashallah say, we've now set up, it's been 2 years since we've set up Engro InfraShare, and our whole goal is to work with the net MNOs and to provide them with the tower infrastructure which can be shared. And what this will obviously result in is savings for these MNOs, and then those funds, it will allow them to deploy more in active equipment. They will be able to solve for capacity issues. They will be able to solve for coverage issues. And our role will be to provide them with this efficiency and optimization in their infrastructure. But more importantly, what I also want to talk about, and I know that there are lots of entrepreneurs here who would probably want to hear this side of how we went into InfraShare. Engro operates a corporate venture capital arm, which is called Engro Infinity. So 2 years ago, when we started this business, we injected about $5 odd million into the tower sharing business. It was obviously it was a startup and had to be dealt with like a startup. You can't bring in a bureaucracy of an industrial conglomerate into a startup. We know all what happens. So allowed the company that freedom to grow, that flexibility to grow over the first 2 years. And now what we've decided is that we're going to move InfraShare from under our corporate venture capital arm under Engro Corporation as a proper vertical. And the commitment that we've already made to this company is now in the tune of around 18 odd billion. We're looking to become a 5,000 to 15,000 tower company, depending on also some of the strategic actions by our customers, which are the MNOs. And clearly, we're looking to invest anywhere between 50 to 150 billion rupees in this vertical for us. So just to share that a business that we started with a $5 million investment in 2 to 2.5 years has now migrated to a much more serious business operation for us. And we'll continue to do the same. We are very keen to work with companies, particularly technology companies, who can somehow add value to the 4 verticals that we operate in. And you know, it'll be great to interact with you, Jahara, at some point on this moving forward. The second area that I want to touch upon is that how does a connected world, how does technology impact our traditional businesses? So just for everyone's information, we are present in petrochemicals, we are present in food and agriculture, we're present in energy and infrastructure. And there are fundamental changes that are coming about in those businesses. Number one, if I was to look at energy, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware that there was a time when we used to have fixed price contracts. They were based on cost plus return. So here is the cost to put up a power project, and there was a return which was dollar-based, the dollar-denominated and fixed. We're now moving into a lot more competitive environment. And I'm sure a lot of you have been reading up about the changes that are coming about in the energy sector, some of the challenges that we have in terms of the circular debt. And what's really happening in a nutshell, without going into too much detail, is that there is a push towards market-based reforms. There is a push towards liberalizing the market. And hence, those days are long gone when there used to be fixed returns. It's going to become, in the next 5 to 10 years, if not less, a more competitive market. And hence, efficiencies are going to become really, really critical. Similarly, if I was to talk about our fertilizer business, here was a business where the demand was always more than supply. So challenge for us in the fertilizer business was always about how can we produce more? Now supply is more than what's demanded in the country. And hence the challenge really is how can we produce and sell more efficiently? So there is a whole, and there are lots of discussions going around in the government circles as well, where there is talk of taking away gas subsidies, where there's talk of, again, opening up markets. Right now, we cannot export fertilizer, but if we were allowed to do so, we can do so in a competitive fashion around the world. So the big move for us is that we're moving from an era of fixed return based on concessions provided by the government to more open markets, where we have to compete regionally, where we have to compete globally. And I think that's a message for, I think, all businesses, us included. The time of rent seeking is gone. And time has come for us to compete on a regional and a global scale. And when you talk about competition, particularly for commodity producers like us, then cost competitiveness becomes very important. And that is where technology steps in, whether it's about access to our customers, whether it's making sure that our supply chains are efficient, whether it's about, realizing some of the synergies that we have as a conglomerate. Technology plays a huge role. And that is why we've embarked on a huge digitization journey last 2 years ago, where we are implementing SAP. We are consolidating all our SAP instances, and based on what SAP has told me, it's the largest implementation in Pakistan since its inception. And what this will allow us is not just productivity increases, but giving a better customer experience, giving a better employee experience. And why is a better employee experience important for us? Because we fundamentally, as an organization, believe that if we can attract the right talent and nurture them, then there are no limits. Then we can play a much more meaningful role towards the future of our company. So to satisfy all of these little buckets, we feel that technology is the right answer. And we've seen that in the COVID environment as well, where, mashallah say, with lockdowns, with minimal people coming on to our head offices, we were able to produce results which were perhaps in some ways better than what we had forecasted even before COVID. And it, mashallah say, allowed us smooth operations. And technology interventions have also now allowed us to think about what are some of the learnings that we will take from a COVID environment going into a post-COVID environment, where, perhaps we're now thinking that building real estate and offices for 60% of our people is good enough, because we now have the technology tools to enable people to work from home, and also tools on the HR side to make sure that we are measuring productivity of people as opposed to the fact that they've been in office from 9 to 6. So this whole move of moving from, sort of environment where you want people to be in office for X number of hours to how are they actually contributing? And then tools to measure that contribution that they've made and fairness in the system to reward them for it. So whichever way you look at it, I think one of the lessons that I've learned again, despite being part of the technology sector for 15 years in my previous life, is that it works. And it's working for us at Engro, not because it's a nice to have, but we don't have an option. So, really excited about the company's future, both in terms of growing our business in the connectivity sector and also to transform our traditional businesses to become more competitive regionally and globally. Thank you very much to the conference organizers. Jahara, always a pleasure to see you. And I look forward to next year as well. Thank you so much.